So our next guest moved to this great city nearly 20 years ago after attending Berklee College of Music on a scholarship. Now, his talent, dedication, and passion would pave a path to immense success, playing and touring with many acclaimed artists. Now, some of you may know him for his expressive facial features when he's playing in the pocket, and many know him as a member of the Roots, where his infectious bass grooves are heard by millions on TV on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. But we know him as a very active and supportive member of our vibrant alumni community. So please help me give another warm, huge welcome to Mark Kelley. Woo! Oh, God.
So when I was asked a few months ago to do this, I wondered, what could I say to a room full of artists that they haven't already thought about? And the answer is absolutely nothing, because you think about absolutely everything. So the only thing that I could think that would be helpful is to tell a little bit about myself, my story, and just the overall theme of that, which is something that I think that somebody in here might need to hear or want to hear or will encounter later. I start by asking if anybody is familiar with the term or the word MacGuffin. Has anybody heard of that before? If anybody, the people who have not heard of that, it was something that was developed by a great film producer and director named Alfred Hitchcock. And the purpose of it was to string the audience through the film. It helps us to understand the story, the development of characters, and all types of things. So in essence, it's a ticking time bomb that never goes off. It just dissipates. So as an example, you could have a diplomat who's traveling from New York City to Washington, D.C. to develop some sensitive information, and he's gonna travel by train. He goes into Penn Station, puts down his duffel bag to buy a cup of coffee, and while he does that, this character that only the audience sees enters the screen and puts this ticking time bomb in the diplomat's bag and exits the scene before he sees it, or we're the only ones that are aware that this happened. Now we're focused on the bag. Diplomat takes his bag, gets on his train, and can't find anywhere to put his bag. And he looks, finds his seat, and right over a family of five, a beautiful family of five, there is a spot for him to put his duffel bag, and that's where he puts it. Goes back to his seat, falls asleep. His stop is Washington, D.C. This family's stop is before that. While he's sleeping, they get off of the train and accidentally take his duffel bag with them. And now we're focused on what's gonna happen, when is this bomb gonna go off? And while that's happening, we're learning about this family and we're learning about everything. This is the MacGuffin. Ultimately, the bomb never goes off because other things in the story start to come to life, which take our focus off of that MacGuffin, and this is how we get to enjoy the story. I often attribute our talents, our passions, our abilities to this MacGuffin, as it's the thing that strings us through life, only it never dissipates. So I guess the overall point of what I'm gonna say is to always stay the course. Never deviate, under no circumstance. So when I first started, my father is a classical pianist and my mother is a physician. And I came from this house of education and excellence is what we need to do. And I have other siblings who made great grades, and one sister who's a dentist and another one who is a visual artist but has done a lot of corporate things with that. And then you would go into their rooms, my parents would see them doing their homework, and then they'd open my door and find me playing an air guitar solo to Live in Color's Cult of Personality. Their smiles would often melt when they would see me doing these things because they just felt, what is he gonna do? I had a course and I followed it. I had tried to play piano, I was horrible. I tried to play the cello, still horrible. I tried to play the guitar and was not great. But for some reason, when I found a bass guitar, everything changed. There was this light that turned on. I knew that it was something that I was supposed to do. I got a bass guitar for one Christmas morning, and the following day, I was now a bass player in a heavy metal band. That led on to me playing in school, in middle school, and going to a performing arts high school. I auditioned, and I was rejected. I failed the audition. So I thought maybe if if that wasn't the thing for me to do. I was about to change my course. I decided I was going to try to play another instrument, do something else. And I had assumed this new identity all summer. I'm about to be a guitar player now. I'm going to do my thing. And then a week before school started, I was called back to this school to re-audition because there was now space for me to join. So I auditioned, and now I was in this performing and visual arts high school in Houston. That set me up for the next 8 years of my life. I played there, and then I went to Berklee. I got accepted to Berklee, and then once I was close to graduating and decided that I'd been getting a lot of calls, and I was just kind of ready to leave and go on the road and do some touring. I didn't finish. I didn't get my degree. I left, and I moved to New York City. I started playing with this guitarist named John Schofield, and I went on the road with him in his Uber Jam band for a few years, and that kind of dropped me in New York City. After that happened, I was in New York, and I found that New York wasn't a very kind place to musicians who were just trying to figure it out, playing in bars and trying to make a living. It was very difficult to do. And I started to have these thoughts. It's time for me to maybe just leave, go back home, start over again. I started having these thoughts, and as they started getting more and more serious, a manager for a bar I was working in walks up to me and he says, "Hey, I found this lady outside, and I asked her if she wanted to come in and watch the band." She introduced herself, and her name was Michelle Ndegeocello. For those of you who know who she is, for those of you who don't, she's a wonderful artist. I'd urge you to check her out. I ended up working with her for 10 years after that. I mean, I still worked with her to the present. Once again, I was trying to deviate from my path, and I got pushed back onto my path. I worked with her for years, and then once again, I started to get in this place where I was looking at all my peers from Berklee and some other people that I knew, and I felt like everybody else was so much further along than I was. And I felt like I should be further ahead than I am, and I wasn't. I felt that way, and again, I was ready to pack up and start over again and move back to Texas. I called my parents, and this time I was going a little bit further. I said, "I'm ready to come back home and just try to see what I can do, if I can try to restart again." I flew home, and I was going to go to Austin to try to find a place to live, check it out. En route to Austin, my one last gig that I had left at a club, at a bar in New York, I got called, and they said, "Listen, this guy, he's starting to play with all the other bands here, and he wants your night too." My last gig, this is the last thing I have. It's going, okay, fine. So I said, "You know what, I'm moving to Austin anyway. I don't care." I let it go. I moved on. About 10 minutes after I pulled into the parking lot in Austin, I get a phone call right after I checked in to this hotel where somebody asked me, was I interested in joining the Roots at NBC with Jimmy Fallon? I said, absolutely. So now I talked to my father, and he's like, "Well, you're going back to New York. You're not coming to Houston." So I went back to New York again. There's always been this thing, this force, this energy that is always, I like to call that energy God. I don't know what anybody else likes to call it, but you can call this energy whatever you like, but that energy has always kind of been around to keep me from diverging off this path. So now I'm at Fallon, and everything is great, everything feels good. I have no problems or worried about my career or anything of that nature, and then the pandemic hits. And there was all these issues. I'm sorry I'm glazing over a lot of issues because I have a very short window of time to speak, so I'm trying to say a lot of things here. But the pandemic hit, and now the issue of job security became a serious concern for me. What happens when all of this ends, you know? And so I started to do this thing where my wheels start spinning. What can I do? Maybe I should go to college and try to figure out something else. So strangely enough, I started going to college again, and I started taking these biology courses because I had this genius idea that, because I always said that if I wasn't a musician, I'd be a doctor. And those who know me probably would laugh so hard if they heard me say that. But I was going to school, and I was going to train to become a CRNA, if anybody knows what that is. That's a registered nurse anesthetist. So I was going to be in charge of putting people under and doing something of this nature, which was crazy. But at any rate, I was starting to do this, and it led me in all these circles, right? And one thing was that I was like, well, if I'm gonna do this, then that means I have to stop doing music, and I don't think that's the call. So what's gonna be the next thing? And then it turned into maybe I could do something, with telemental health or something. I was like, all right, well, maybe that. I looked into it, no. And in one of my classes, this kid started talking to me about coding. Another thing, I have no idea. It was like computer programming. It was like, that sounds like it's for me. This is all happening while I'm working here at NBC, by the way. This is still something that's going on in my head. I'm still diverging from this path, even though I'm here and on it. I went and as I was researching, there was this idea that, hey, if you have a degree, this could be something that you could go even further with. So I'm thinking, all right, a degree, I need to get a degree. So then, again, I got pushed back into the path and I went back to Berklee and I finished my bachelor's degree this past September. So, I know this is a real roundabout story and real crazy and all over the place, but my point in all of it is that no matter what, there are so many times I tried to diverge from this path that I've been on because I wasn't making enough money, or because there are others that are further ahead, or I felt that I should be further ahead than where I am. And that couldn't be further from the truth. The reason that we're all here, as Steven Tyler said at my graduation, the reason that you're all here is because you're not all there. And I think that if we're all crazy enough to be here, it's because we followed a passion. And there's going to be times where we're going to feel like it's going to be best to leave this passion alone and move on to somewhere else or try something new. But I urge you, under no circumstance, for you to deviate from your path. I leave with this one quote from James Baldwin, which is, "There is reason after all that some people wish to colonize the moon and others dance before it as an ancient friend." My takeaway, there's a lot in that statement, but what my takeaway is that there can be two people who can be looking at the same thing. And because of their worldview, because of their intentions, because of their experiences, we can have different interpretations of that one thing that we see. And that one thing that we can see sometimes is our career path, and we can be those two different people at the same time. So I urge you to be the one that dances before your path as an ancient old friend, as opposed to going the other direction and throwing it away. Thank you.